Hello, welcome, welcome. Yeah, the light is okay. A little bit dark, but I think it'll do. If I lift the tripod up too high, it begins to tilt. Hi, welcome. Hello. Hello, hello. What's up, Beijitsu? I liked your video on Marichasana, your TikTok video. That was you, yeah? Hi everyone, welcome, welcome, welcome. Zahra, hi, I haven't forgotten. I need to send you a response in terms of what you asked me about the massage. I haven't forgotten. Yes. Welcome to our welcome to our conversation. Oh, whoops. I am trying to see where our guest is. Where is our guest for the evening? Here we go. Yes, Donna just arrived, so I'm gonna send you a friend. Yes, here we go. Go.
Hi. For some reason I can't hear anything. Okay, now I can. Yeah. Wait, what's wrong with the sound? Uh, do I have to put on earphones? Can you hear me? Just a second. Let me go to the sound settings and oh, okay.
Can you hear me? Yes, yes, yes. Okay, sorry
Yes.
guys. Sorry everyone. I had still had my headphones on and that's why there was no sound. So
Yeah, that's what I was wondering. I was like, what's going on?
you couldn't hear me. No one could hear me. Oh well. No problem. We figured it out. All right, let's take two. Hi everyone. Welcome. So I'm super excited to welcome my guest, my sister, my friend Donna. And we're going to get into a really rich conversation around healing and the various modalities that Donna offers. But before we get into that, just in the spirit of, just creating ritual and, just having our conversations and our time together in this digital way. It's still a community that we're creating together. So in the spirit of that, I'd really like us just to sit for a moment and place ourselves in the time and the space of the now. Human beings, we've always strived and struggled, and there's always been so much going on. And so this time is no different. It just is maybe in our faces a lot more with technology. But certainly, of course, with the ongoing global pandemic, that's still happening. With the ongoing systemic oppression as it shows up in anti-Black racism and the struggle dance for Black Lives Mattering fully, every realm of life, as well as just what's been happening in Turkey with the femicides and recently in Belarus. Fascism and oppression everywhere or anywhere is fascism and oppression anywhere, right? So just taking a moment, if you wish to close the eyes or just keep them open, and just if we can be silent for just a few breaths here. And if the breath is something that is not an anchor for you, you might just notice and feel being grounded with wherever you are sitting or standing or lying down. Just a few moments of interconnectedness with our global family. And may our time together this evening add light and positivity into the mix of things. All right, so Donna, I love it. I was like, I better put some lipstick on because I know girlfriend's gonna bring it.
Yes.
So here we are. So Donna, welcome. I would like just for you to introduce yourself, let folks know who you are and what you're about.
So hey everyone, thank you, Omboy, for giving me this space to speak on your platform. So actually, my name is Dorina, but people close to me call me Donna. So I'm a soul healing invoker, and I do healing. I'm a healing practitioner, so I work with healing writing, which is a form of journal therapy, as well as I do energy healing, and I coach people to come to their self love. Hey, Dom, to their self love, and I coach them also, especially healing through grief and things that they may be going through. So usually, how I do that is by through my books. I'm also an author, a 2 times published author, and also I love communing. And actually, my target audience is actually people of color, Black people, Africans, diaspora Africans, and mainly right at the moment, I'm working with women because I feel like we need it the most since women hold pain in their wombs. And that's who I am working with, at least to help them release that trauma. Because when you come into that self-love, then you are more open to heal. So self-love is basically the root of everything when it comes to healing.
Awesome. So much of what you said is so rich, and I really want to unpack it. Where to start? I think, with the onset of this pandemic and just the fact that all of us, and of course we're experiencing and living the pandemic in very different capacities depending on our kind of like just base level of comfort and security on the material plane. But I would say that for most of us, 2020 has been defined as a year of loss and disappointment, like any kind of plans you had, any kind of travel, any kind of movement, projects you had, these have either had to be paused or cancelled or hopefully postponed to next year. So I just feel a sense and the discussion being had like of collective grief and loss and disappointment.
Mm-hmm.
So grief is definitely something that I don't think is really we've as indigenous people, which we all are depending on where our ancestors have come from, but we all have some indigeneity, right? I believe we were all connected to grieving as a process throughout life, and I feel like we've definitely lost touch of that, living in this construct of whiteness and capitalism and patriarchy and the rest. So I love that you talked about grief, and might you be able to elaborate a little bit on the role that grief plays when we're talking about healing and
Mm,
the process of transformation? So,
yeah. I would like to say before I talk about grief is that sometimes, like, because whatever we're going through, it's like as a collective, we go through as a collective.
right.
However, if you think about some people who have different, let's say, professions, there's so many people who had put it out to the universe that they did not want to go to work, and if they just had time, and if they would just, like not have to go to work to the point where I remember reading lots of articles last year where people in different countries were feeling like they just it was a forum that I was checking out because since I was doing the healing, where some would say that they just want to kill themselves because they hate their jobs and everything.
Mm.
Some people, this has been a sense of relief because they have the time to reinvent themselves.
That's, yeah, you're right.
Yeah, and
I'm glad you brought
yeah,
that other side of it.
yeah.
Totally. It's totally
So
true. Yeah.
So it's been an opportunity for some people to reinvent themselves,
Yeah.
and it's been an opportunity for people to actually look into themselves and realize, is the life that they're living worth it? Like, what are they doing? Whatever they're doing, is it a reflection of who they really are? And are the decisions that they're making important to them, or they're just following what society wants them to do?
Mm-hmm.
Because
Mm-hmm.
all just souls living in a human body at the end of the day. So it's like, are you doing what your soul is doing? And sometimes when we come into depression, as I go towards grief, sometimes you're depressed because you're doing the thing that you're not supposed to be doing.
Mm-hmm. You're not aligned in your purpose.
Exactly. You're
Yeah.
not aligned in purpose. So you wake up every day feeling that something is missing.
Yeah.
And sometimes, when it comes, as I'm leading towards grief, sometimes the things that we lost are not the things that we actually wanted.
Mm.
And sometimes the things that we thought we wanted are things that actually go against our alignment.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
Because I could give an example. You knew me back in the day. I was this
I
lifestyle
did.
blogger.
We go
And
back.
yeah,
We go
yeah,
back.
lifestyle blogger. I
Yeah.
loved, like, I even got a sommelier, like I'm a certified sommelier. But then right now, I remember when I was doing that, traveling and doing all these things, then I loved what I was doing, but I always felt like something was missing.
Mm.
And I remembered when I started coaching, I realized that actually this is my purpose, but I was too scared to actually own it.
Mm.
And then in the end, I spent, I think after my dad passed on, because my dad was terminally ill. So that was the time that I had to face the grief
Mm.
of letting go of the person that my parents wanted me to be,
Absolutely. Yeah.
and letting go of what the society wanted me to be,
Mm. Mm.
and finding that path to figure out who I really was. And also, when it comes to grief, there's a lot of anger involved because there are these things that we hang on to that actually don't serve us. And on top of that, it's everything, because when it comes to death, no matter what it is, because like when people say being born again, it's not actually that you die, it's a part of you dies, and then you have to reinvent yourself, because at the end of the day, we play the different roles in our lives. For example, you're a mom, you're a partner, you're a yogi, and you're doing all these wellness things, and you're doing everything that's truly aligned to who you are. And these are choices that you made because you realize that, okay, if I do these things that I have been doing before, I lose that one boy that I used to be. And sometimes we also grieve the people that we used to be in the past. But then, and sometimes we have to go back and look at the people we were and at our happiest, and try and bring forth those aspects of us so that we can come back and be a little bit, and a bit more whole. Because it's just about dismantling. Because when it comes to learning, or grieving, it's about unlearning different patterns and learning to accept that even in your brokenness, you're still whole.
Yeah, and yes, and I feel like, and this going back to kind of like indigenous practices, I feel like
Mm,
there were in different stages, as you talked about, being a mom and a partner, and my old self has to
Mm,
transition so it has
mm,
space for my new self. And I feel
yeah,
like being in community and being in culture, and I'm not saying that everything was great and rosy back in the
yeah,
old days, but what I am saying is that the structure of life was situated in a way that
mm,
it was like like there was like rituals and structure,
mhm.
like, and so even if you were grieving, and even if you had conflicting emotions about transitioning from one phase of life to another, we
You
were
had support.
held in community, and
Yeah.
it was like a thing, you know what I'm talking about, and
Yes,
which is something I feel is dismembered and fragmented in modern
yeah.
society. So I kind of hear like having this memory and this ancestral remembering that of what it is, in order to transition to align into who we are meant to be, but there's not really a structure supporting us
Mm,
these
mm,
days.
mm.
So I'm curious, you mentioned your father passing, and then you transitioned from being this lifestyle blogger into um, who you are now. What are some of the tools that you have used along the way to incorporate grief into your work, and also just for your own self transformation on your path?
Okay.
If you,
So
if you
there are
yeah.
different tools that I used, but the primary tool that I've always used, and regardless what I've been doing, is my grounding technique is
Mm-hmm.
being outside and
Mm.
taking time to find spaces where I can just be outside and be in nature.
Yeah,
And that was and that's free. In some countries, maybe you
absolutely.
have to pay to enter a park or something, but that wherever I was, whether I was in Kenya or Switzerland, I would take time and sit outside and just be. And if it meant that I felt like crying, I would let that come through because
Mm.
things are
Mm-mm-mm.
they're here to come. So you can always choose to have them, but then you also have to let them go. And
Lots
then
of heart for that one.
and then the other thing that I really leaned onto is healing writing, which is a form of journal therapy. Because at that time, who knows, like
Mm.
funerals in Kenya are so expensive. They're almost as expensive as weddings. So I remember like planning the funeral and the cost that went through it. And plus my dad was terminally ill. So then, all that stuff. So like
Yeah.
supporting that. And I couldn't afford, like I basically could not afford therapy. So what I did was I just wrote in my journal, and then how I led to this was like I started writing actually a novel about my experience of dealing with a terminal ill, like how it affects the dynamics in the family. And then what
Mm.
happened was, when I was done with it, it was so raw and there were things that I wasn't ready to share. And I was like, now I wrote this book. What next? And then I had a voice tell me, but you've been writing poetry all these years, and why don't you just collect them together and form them and write and publish it as a book? And I was like, really? Like, okay, I wrote it and I didn't even know what to do. And I was just like, is it something that I really need to share? So then I started having conversations with people. Then I kept hearing the lines of my poetry being said to me. And I was just like, okay, fine. So then after I released my book, which is my first book, which is A Journey to Healing, that is what actually opened up my heart to actually own this journey, that I am a soul healing invoker. And through writing how I felt, and the best thing about poetry is that you can allude, and there are people who actually do healing writing. I would say Rupi Kaur is also
Mm-hmm.
someone who
Yeah.
does healing writing,
Yeah.
because her whatever she writes speaks to your soul as a woman of color. There are things that you can relate to, and then you can also see different structures of what she speaks about. And for the funny thing is, journal therapy is actually usually it's actually quite personal, but me and her chose to put our business out there. So
Uh-huh.
so that's the thing. And then some of the stuff that I've written is also pertaining to things that I had seen within society. So then that's how my journey to healing. And then when I was doing some coaching and I was talking to my clients, I realized that sometimes they were not able to say what they really needed by asking questions and making them write about them. In the end, we realized that maybe this this person who came to me wanted to learn about assertiveness, but actually they were depressed and they were unsatisfied with their lives, and they just needed to find their way back to who they were. And that's why I say conversation helps you come home to yourself, because that's all we all want to be. We just want to come home to ourselves and be in our essence. And healing and self-love is that way, because if you're able to see yourself in your darkness, and you're able to love even and have compassion for yourself even in your times of darkness, then that way you're able to emanate the light and become fully who you are. Because sometimes the darkness in us actually helps us do the things that we need to do.
Absolutely, and I'm glad you brought up darkness. There's, if I hope I can remember them, two things I heard recently on the dark light binary, which is darkness is simply light unseen, right? So it's serving a purpose to reveal itself into wisdom and insight and clarity and compassion. So really not needing to fear the dark, mysterious, unresolved kind of like parts of ourselves, but it's really that it's there like serving a purpose, right? And then the other one I heard was we practice in the light what we practice in the light so that we can somehow like call upon these practices when we're in the darkness, right? So the second one, I don't quite remember so well what it was, but it's like, even if you're having a good day, you're waking up feeling great, you're still going to wake up and, you know, get on the mat, do your meditation, do your daily writing, do your yoga, do your movement, so that when you're having a really bad day and you don't want to do anything, you have that memory of and that kind of like resolve and conviction to keep being consistent with the practices and tools. Folks, if anyone in the chat has any questions that you want to put in for Donna, or any like commentary and insight to share, we are absolutely like welcoming those. So go ahead and put your stuff in the commentary. So can you describe like you know, because for me, my primary practices that I use for healing and feeling well and managing my darkness and my light in equanimity and compassion has been primarily through yoga, breath and body work, meditation as well. But one thing that I've really also, and this is, I've always enjoyed words and books and reading and writing, just kind of like it goes in phases. What might be like any advice you would want to give somebody like me who enjoys writing but is kind of inconsistent about it? Like, I wouldn't say it's a healing, I mean, it is a healing practice of mine, but it's not one I really use or do consistently. What advice would you have for somebody who maybe wants to be a bit more intentional about using journal therapy as a healing modality?
It's all about choice, and it's all about what's important to you. So I always tell my clients that if you're able to set aside 10 minutes a day, or even like use journal prompts. If you find journal prompts, there's different apps that you can use that may have journal prompts. I'm sorry, I haven't done research on that because I have my own journal prompts. But then like just maybe you'll have a question. For example, these are the journal prompts that I help with people. I wrote them down so I don't forget. Is, for example, ask yourself a question. Why do I feel this way? And then just go and start doing free writing, and then from there, because every day if you have a question that you ask, like, why do I feel this way, what circumstances led to these feelings, and then every day find a question, answer that question, and then that way you'll be able to dig deeper and see where your emotions lie. And the good thing about journaling is it's kind of like a compass, so then you see how far you've gone. So maybe this day you are so angry, you are feeling anguish, and depressed. And then maybe 3 weeks later, you ask yourself the same question and you realize you're much happier because
Right.
you were able to let go of that thing.
Mm.
So I tell people at least 5 minutes, put a timer or use the Pomodoro, the Pomodoro method.
Right.
Just
Right.
set a timer, even if it's just 5 minutes, or do free writing, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, because usually with journal therapy, you take 20 minutes. But
Mm.
I always tell people, just like meditation,
Mm.
start somewhere.
Mm.
Start somewhere, whether it's 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes. And then when you get the hang of it, you can always increase the frequency, or make a conscious decision. I'm going to journal twice a week,
Right.
and then increase it from there, because then that way you're intentional. You put it in your calendar that today is the day I'm journaling.
It
And
sounds
then after that, you look forward to it, so then it slowly becomes a habit. So that's what, just start somewhere,
right.
but just start.
This is exactly the advice I give folks who want to start a yoga practice. It's like 2 times a week, build it up to 3, start 10 minutes. It's the same. It's absolutely the same advice. So I can totally do that. And I'm just curious, because I used to do morning pages for a while. I'm sure you know morning pages, right?
Yeah.
Is it like, do you go back and read your stuff, or is it just kind of like a brain dump, if you know what I mean? Just like
It's a
writing it down.
purge.
It's a
It's
purge.
usually,
So
yeah.
do you go back and like associate and engage yourself in your purge, or do you just kind of like let it go and actually
I
like
let it go completely, because sometimes there's some incidents that happen to me, and like maybe instead of writing a journal prompt, it turned out into to being a poem, right? And
okay.
then, like that time when I was writing my book, like the second book that I published, the first poem that's in that book, I'd even forgotten about that incident,
Okay.
completely, totally forgotten about that. And so then when I read it back, I
Yeah.
cried, and I felt bad for that part of me, that Donna, that had to experience that. So I usually shut it, like I have so many journals.
Mm.
Um, the only time that I go back is maybe if you're into astrology and then someone says, oh, like go back to Venus retrograde and see what you go back to your journal. And then I'll see what my mind was thinking about then, and
Mm.
then compare it with what's if there's a Venus retrograde, what it's saying now.
Mm.
Or if I am thinking about a situation and I'm trying to make a decision, I'll
Mm.
be like, so how did this lead up to this situation? Has this happened before? And then I'll go back. But usually once I'm done and dusted, and I forget all about it.
Right. And so
Yeah.
I'm glad
Letting
you
go.
said that, because it's like what I mean, and then like let's say you're just writing and most of it is just a purge, it's a
Mhm.
cleansing, it's just like your practice, your process, not for consumption. But then what if there's actually like some jewel, some treasure of writing that needs to be made into something different? Like you gave
Yeah.
the example of you, and what was it? Was it part of your book that you
Yes.
turned into?
Yeah, I
So
published it.
okay, so how do you kind of know what's like treasure and what's trash?
Hmm. I always go with my intuition, to be
Yeah.
honest. And at the end of the day, we're all humans, we're all having a human experience, right?
Right.
So when I am deciding what to treasure, there's some things that maybe I won't share with people, but there's certain things that I feel that must be shared with people, because someone may have experienced the same thing, and if I keep it to myself,
Mm.
how will that person out there feel that they're being validated if I keep it to myself? So when it comes to things, like for example, that I'll tell you, it's called that particular situation is Chronicles of a Man Boy, and it was me telling a story of what it's like being in white spaces and having white men objectify you, and sexualize you, and really cross your boundaries, even if you have explicitly said no.
Yeah.
you know. So that was
Mm,
a story. It was a very painful experience, and
mm,
I'd totally forgotten about it. And then when I read the book, like when I read it, I'd forgotten the
yeah.
whole incident happened. But then when I went back, because I was writing the book and I was looking for material, and
Mm,
then I made it the first one because I felt I wanted people to see, because it's in the book A Journey to Love, because a
mhm,
journey a journey to self-love always starts with boundaries,
mhm.
knowing what what works for you and what doesn't, and how to speak and say no when things feel
Absolutely.
uncomfortable.
Let's say that one more time because that's so important. You said a journey to self-love.
A journey to self-love means knowing your boundaries and
Yeah.
learning to say no, and being strong with it, because most of the time, like, people change because they don't want to make someone feel bad. But if you don't love yourself, you allow people to push your boundaries to the point where you just give up and you let people actually take your power, when the power is in you.
Well, and especially as those female identifying persons, we've been conditioned and socialized. I know certainly and definitely like in
Mm-hmm.
Kenya, there was it's very kind of like conservative. I
Mm-hmm.
hope it's changing now than it was like when I was coming up, but the gender roles were extremely rigid. And I remember like just it was all about being conditioned to be sweet and like agreeable and pleasant, and
Mm-hmm.
then really realizing that like, wow, yeah, this people pleasing habit that I
Mm-hmm.
internalized, it's really no longer serving me. And
Yeah,
it's fully empowering, but it's also frightening to step into that, right?
yeah,
Because it's
yeah,
years and years of socialization and conditioning. And
yeah,
so
yeah. But people pleasing also stems from, maybe from, because everything that we do and everything we think is a set of programming. So it's about us unlearning those sets of programming,
absolutely.
because maybe we're just repeating what we see our guardians or parents doing,
Yeah.
thinking, and because it's been normalized. Because some people could grow up in a narcissistic household
Mm,
and they never actually realized that that was not normal, because in
mm,
their household
that
love
was
was
normalized.
abuse. So
Yeah.
they equate abusive love. So you have someone overexerting themselves, don't know how to say no and stuff, and you see that, and you don't know how to equate that in your life, and you just you weren't given the tools on how to set boundaries because there were none.
Yeah. Yeah.
So how do you learn that? So it's about
Mm,
learning to parent yourself, learning to forgive your inner child, and learning to be and accept you for who you are, regardless of what people say or think. Because at the end of the day, the only person that can make you happy is you. Because when you rely on other people for your happiness, because, and also, if you rely on other people for forgiveness, if
yeah.
they die or something and they never said that sorry, like, are you gonna,
Yeah.
you know
Yeah.
so
There's not really an
it's your
option. There's not really an option there. Yeah, happiness, forgiveness, those are absolutely inside jobs. And I will just say that it's a tall order, especially coming from like, a Kenyan culture, which is like so much about respecting your elders and listening to your elders.
yeah,
And it's like, well, hang on a minute, what is it actually I'm supposed to be respecting about this right now? Just because
yeah,
someone's older than
yeah,
me, you know what
yeah.
I'm saying?
Yeah,
So
I understand, and then or I overstand, actually.
yeah. Yeah.
So when it comes to those things, when it comes to like boundaries and stuff, I always say there are methods that you can use. For example, I use this silent assertiveness, where this elder can speak their truth,
Mm,
but just because they're speaking their truth doesn't mean that it's true to me.
mm,
So if I do have the points that I have, of they're telling me that this is this and this and this and that, so then when they're done speaking, which is the respect that I'm giving them, to give them the floor, I'll say, by the way, you said this and this, and then I'll dispel what they're saying so that they can know that no, this is not okay with me.
mm,
Because at the end of the day, tradition is peer pressure from dead people.
Woo!
So at the end of the day, we need to create our own traditions and our own forms of culture, because we cannot, people because if you think about our parents, some of them were born during the time when Kenya was colonized, or maybe they were born during the World War, or when it was coming
Mm,
up. They have their own traumas and things that they need to deal with. So their programming is so different from ours. So we cannot use the same methods that we're used to control them on ourselves, because at the end of the day, we're not giving ourselves a chance to thrive in the way that we're supposed to be.
Absolutely. And this was a learning lesson for me, that I had to accept that, you know what, my like quest and aspiration for pushing the needle forward in the times now, it's not, I don't need my parents alongside me to do it, because, and it was a realization I just had. I was like, you know what, my parents have done their work. They did their work to push the needle forward. And that I'm the product of that. Like, so what more can I expect, except now it's time for them to rest and enjoy life and just be at ease and peace. And that gave me a whole lot of peace. Like, my parents don't have to understand the kind of work and I'm undertaking. And that was a moment of release for me. Like, I don't actually need to explain to them or have them understand all of what's going on. And if it means that we're not going to be like approaching certain topics, that's fine. We can talk about other things and just enjoy each other's company. So
and you can agree to disagree, at the end of the day. And another thing that you brought forth that gave me, I don't know, now my brain fart. It was something that you said, and then something came up. But it's important to, at the end of the day, it's all about honoring yourself. Because
and I love that, because I've been doing also a lot more inner child meditations and parenting myself. I love that you brought that up, because that's so potent and powerful, and really like puts the onus of responsibility, but not in a grim way, like, oh God, now it's all on my shoulders, but just the fact that like, like, what are the parts of yourself from when you were younger and more vulnerable and smaller and haven't quite resolved moments when you weren't cared for and seen and heard. Well, now you can give that to yourself, and that just feels so lovely and warm and compassionate that you can. And I did that yesterday when I was going on my evening walk. I just like invoked my 16-year-old self. And I was just like, for all the ways that you weren't seen and heard and cared for and loved, this is me, who I am today, loving you and seeing you and caring for you and hearing you, and then let's just walk together. And it's extremely powerful, this inner child work, and being your own best parent. And I think it does also help with my own parenting.
And then the most important thing, because because healing is a continuous process. It doesn't end just because because you've done this work doesn't mean that it's over. It's a continuous process.
On a spiral, on a spiral, on a spiral.
Exactly. And you must give yourself grace. You must give yourself grace. And like one boy was talking about the inner child, the most important thing that I tell people is like, forgive yourself for what you did not know then. Because at the end of the day, you were probably in a position that you did not know what to do, and your response was probably what you saw other people do. And it may have been wrong, but at the time, that was the best knowledge that you had, and you did what you had to do to survive whatever situation it was.
And I mean, and I'm just reading a book on trauma, Bessel van der Kolk. I really recommend it. And I mean, the resilience of human beings who go through just such like so much, but the resilience of the human spirit to survive and to just it's astounding to me.
Yes.
So we really are programmed, for better or worse, one way or the other, to somehow like
find our way home.
Yeah. So there was maybe some poetry you wanted to share with us. How are you feeling? How are you feeling the spirit to share with us? We have about 20 minutes, so I just didn't want
Okay.
us to be cut off.
Okay, so what I'm gonna do is like I'm just gonna give just for the last part is about journal therapy, is
Yes,
that it
please.
really activates critical thinking. And at a time like this where there's cancel culture,
Oh yeah, yes, yes. Thank you for bringing that up.
where the cancel culture, this whatever you're writing in your journal is for you, because the thing
Mm,
is, we live in a society where political correctness has also become a form of silencing our truth and how we feel. So when you're writing whatever, because sometimes you may have a question, but you're scared to ask because you're scared of coming off racist, you're scared of coming off stupid, you're scared of coming off ignorant. But and then nowadays, yes, I know there's Google, but sometimes the stuff we find on Google might not actually be quite helpful.
mm,
So we need to be mindful of that. And when you're writing in journal therapy, it's all about writing whatever comes to you. You can do free form writing, but the most important thing is when you write it, just know that you're writing it so that you can let it go.
mm,
If it keeps looping in your mind, then and it's something you can't let go, then that's when you should seek help.
mm, mm.
Because then it's something, then that's a block. Because if you
Yeah,
can't let go, it's a
yeah.
block. And there are three types of healing, like to a process of healing. So the when you're coming to healing, there's the acceptance. That's the one that I usually deal with when people come to me. And that means you're aware of the things that you couldn't control,
Mm,
the lessons involved in your experiences, and your responsibility in those experiences, and that means that you're working towards it. But then there's also passiveness, where some people are they know that they need healing, they know that what they need to do, but they just can't bring themselves to do that.
mhm,
And um, and sometimes it becomes a cycle, but just know that when you're ready, don't judge yourself for being in that cycle, because eventually you'll get out of it when you want to. So it's also a choice. But then the other one that I've noticed a lot is when it comes to healing, there's also sometimes a form of complacency, and it means that you're an active participant in your healing. However, you resort to self-sabotage.
mm.
And
Can you get into that a little bit more, Donna?
yes, so when it
There
comes
was a lot of resonance with that. So yeah, let's talk about self sabotage.
because self-sabotage is a fear of being, sometimes when people have self-sabotage, it's a fear of being great, a fear of being loved, a fear of um of of moving on, because sometimes people
Taking
are
up space.
exactly, and sometimes people are comfortable in their victimization, because when you do not have that victimization or that story of what happened to you, then you don't know who you are. You don't know how to navigate with that complacency.
Mm,
And the other thing, I have these notes. And then you also have to realize that all these things are choices. When you want healing, it's a choice. But that's why I always talk to people first to see where they are, because sometimes your your heart might be ready, but your
right.
mind is not. So they have to be, both your heart and mind must be connected for you to come to healing. But the ultimate goal is to go towards acceptance, but it always starts with complacency, passiveness, and then acceptance. And that's,
Okay. Yeah.
and then when it comes to self-sabotage, like I said, it's a fear. It's a form of fear, a fear of, some people don't want to be healed, because then who's going to comfort them? Because sometimes they like being the
It
victim.
can be an
Yeah,
attention thing. You get attention with it, whether it's like good or bad, and then it's
yeah,
like nobody's gonna see me anymore. Yeah, it
yeah,
becomes part of your identity. So,
exactly.
can you speak of just like one thing that we might do when we notice we're kind of spiraling into self-sabotage, and how to hold ourselves in grace and not like go further and further down that shame fear spiral?
Triggers.
Okay.
It comes with your triggers, because maybe there might be something that someone says or does that reminds you about something, and that can cause you to spiral, because it's a part of you that you may have not healed. And
Mm,
that is usually the measure of your healing, is how, when something that used to trigger you how much does it affect you? Because
Right.
sometimes triggers come sometimes in a physical form, they may come in an emotional form, and they may come in a mental form,
Mm,
you
mm,
know. So
mm.
then triggers is always the best way to gauge whether it's a self-sabotage. And then you have to ask yourself, do I want this to happen again? And if the answer is no, then you know what to do next. It's
Right.
up, yeah. So
And if the
triggers are
answer is maybe,
if the answer is
you
maybe,
gotta,
then you're
you
in
gotta
passive.
relearn.
Yeah, you still have some work to do.
I remember like I took a loving kindness course last year, and the teacher, she's amazing, Sharon Salzberg. She was talking about, and she didn't call it self sabotage, but that's what I took it away to be, was like giving yourself, offering yourself these phrases of friendliness and wellness and warmth to yourself. It helps reduce the time
Exactly.
spent in that like shame, fear, self
Exactly.
sabotage soup. And so, like, you say something, you make a mistake, you're not at your best. Are you going to then be like 2 weeks out ruminating over this, or like, oh, okay,
Exactly.
well, yep, okay, this is, and then how kind of quickly you can integrate it and then keep
Let
it
it go.
moving, keep it
Yes.
moving. And so that's one thing I have noticed in now my decade plus of spiritual practice and contemplative life, is that mistakes happen all the time. I put my foot in my mouth. I, let my impatience get the best of me. And I noticed that like the recovery time is much faster now.
Yeah.
Whereas
Yeah.
before I would be like, oh, on the couch eating, ice cream,
Yeah.
or binge watching this to self-soothe. But
Yeah.
so anyway.
A trick I tell people is sometimes when you're having those times where you're feeling low, look for those pictures where you're feeling
Yes, I
and
love that.
then, and remember that person you were then, because there's a saying that says that when good things happen to us we celebrate for one day, but when bad things happen to us we grieve for weeks. So why don't we
Mhm.
just switch that up and
Mm.
celebrate that one good thing for a whole week so that we can kind of like let go of what it is. And at the same time, words have power, so whatever you tell yourself you become. So
Mhm.
if you hear yourself saying, that was so stupid, I'm
Yeah.
stupid, rephrase it and say, that wasn't really a great idea. However, I realized. So just rephrase it and yeah. So since we're talking about self-love today, I'm gonna read from my first book. It's A Journey to Healing,
Yes.
and it's Letters to Self-Love.
Mm.
When love doesn't seem enough, the way we treat ourselves so rough. Why do I have to look for validation? Why do I sabotage myself through condemnation? I want to stay healthy, but I eat the very thing that's unhealthy. I want to be honest, but I keep telling myself lies, dishonesty.
Ooh.
My clothes don't fit. I blame the person who made them for changing the sizes. I wallow in self pity for way too long. By the time I snap out of it, my time has gone. The window of opportunity to make my journey easier is gone. I had a molehill and now it's an Everest. Why do I do this to myself? Why can't I love myself enough to care about my well being? Instead, I live life as a fraction of a being. Excuses when confronted, attacking people that only wanted to help. People say, let sleeping dogs lie. Is that what I have become? Someone so difficult to live with? When love doesn't seem enough, I sabotage myself and blame everyone else for my demise. Red flags, sirens, my heart constantly sinking, but I didn't heed the warnings. They were for someone else. How did I get here? I drown myself in the things that do not nourish or help my soul. They numb my pain for a moment, just a moment. What have I done to myself when self-love is not enough?
Mm.
Yes, that's letters to self-love.
That's very like honest and vulnerable.
Yeah, I was
Mm.
actually inspired because I was inspired by a friend who was struggling with something, and they were in that cycle stage, so they kept doing the same things, and yeah, so then that was there,
Yeah.
and then
And I
and
think
then
the one thing you said earlier was just about grace.
yes,
This like exercising grace, even in
hmm
your not finest, darkest, most
yes,
kind of shameful, grossest states of being.
yeah,
That's really where I feel like if we can have a little space to breathe, a little
mm,
grace and compassion for ourselves, we
because
can,
when you start to love those parts of yourself, then
yeah,
you're able to love yourself unconditionally, and then
mm,
it opens up your heart to have compassion for other people, because
absolutely.
sometimes people do what they do not because they're conscious of it. Maybe they were programmed to be in such a situation.
Mm-hmm.
So we just have to find a balance between and that's why I don't really like cancel culture, because some people may have had 100 good moments, and then there's just one thing that went off and someone's like, I'm done with you.
Well, I
And
mean, and cancel culture, it means nobody is safe because
exactly,
everyone is gonna make mistakes at some point.
exactly,
Everyone is fallible. And so if you're going around canceling everyone, like what's not to stop yourself from being canceled? And just
exactly.
yeah, the idea that human beings are disposable.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
And
agree. I think there's other ways we can approach
yeah. And the
things
other
we
thing,
don't agree with and might be actually very problematic and toxic. So
yeah, exactly,
yeah,
exactly.
yeah,
Yeah, but if you just tell someone, okay, I didn't agree with this because of this and this and this and this, then
yeah.
it becomes a learning experience. But if you're just like, you did this, and then maybe someone had no, like, it wasn't even their consciousness that that was something they
You
just did
don't know
for no.
what you don't know, right?
Exactly,
And when you do know, you do better, right?
exactly. So give
Yeah,
someone grace to actually give them room to grow. And then sometimes if
right.
they keep doing the same thing over and over again,
Then
then we
it's a
have
different
no
story.
choice.
Yeah,
Yes.
awesome.
Yeah.
So Donna, I know you have some stuff coming up, and where can people find you, find your book, support your work? Let the people know.
Okay, so you can find me here on Instagram. You can see my handle. It's at Just Monversation. And through my link, you can either sign up or go to my website, which is monversation.com. So that's monversation.com.
So that's
And
conversation, but with an N.
yes,
Yeah.
yes. So monversation.com, and you can find my PDF versions of my books there. I'm actually trying to get my books off Amazon, but you can find them
Oh,
on Amazon
okay.
too.
Mhm.
Actually, it's because of the way Jeff Bezos treats his workers and
I
everything.
That's
It's like,
awesome.
yeah.
That's so
So,
awesome.
because for me, it was the most convenient place to have a
Right.
print on demand. But
So
then,
I
like,
recommend folks to get the PDF directly off your website.
yeah, so if you want, yeah, so you can get the PDF, and there's also the audio version of my first book, A Journey to Healing. You can find that there.
On
Uh, and next month, I'm having a healing circle. So I'm having a 30-day healing. It's a journal. Hi, Camille. It's a journal therapy course. It's available. So it's 190 euros a day, or 190 Kenya shillings a day. So you can sign up, and you'll find the link on my when you go to Just Conversations, the top one. So it's like 30-day healing challenge. And this time I want to dedicate it to people who are going through grief,
right.
especially if you've lost someone in a relationship, or you're finding yourself grappling with your darkness right now. So that it's geared for that. So I'm calling all women who want to help find grace and help come home, want to help into coming home to themselves. I'm here to support you. So what you get is an access to a coach, which is me. So I'll be having live sessions with you or once a week. And then you get journal prompts that you can keep for life. And then on top of that, I'll also give you tips and tricks on healing tools that you can use. And I also have healing sessions available to people. Next week, I am off. It's my birthday week, so I'm not going to be.
Leo
So
season.
I'm not
Leo
going to be.
season. I'm surrounded by Leos.
So if you want a healing session, I'm here to support you. Just DM me and I'll explain to you how that works. But just so you know, it's an energy healing, so we do not need to meet in person. I can do it via Skype, Zoom, or via phone.
Okay.
So yeah, and it takes about 30 minutes to an hour. So it's a 1 hour session. So just contact me and I have spots available. And so those are my offerings. And of course, if you need a coach, I'm here because I can help you with your healing. Because basically I center myself on healing and self-love because I feel that's basically the base of how people will be able to find ways to love themselves unconditionally. And if you do not want to join, then these books is another one, A Journey to Love, will invoke something in you, and you'll be able to have grace for yourself and resonate with and be introspective and realize that at the end of the day, what we're going through is a human experience, and this earth is actually this earth and the place that we are is a school of betterment, bettering our souls and learning what it's like to be and to come home to ourselves.
Thank you so much, Donna, for
Thank you for
being
having me.
you and just the light you shine and bring into the world. Hi, Claudia. Hi, Camille. We're just about wrapping up here, but I'll be posting this. Can you mention once more where books can be purchased? Yes, they can be purchased at monversation.com.
Yeah. Or
Okay.
if they're still up on Amazon if you want to get them for
And
now.
Donna's, I'm just gonna type in your just Monversation.
Yeah.
So you can find Donna's Instagram here. I just put it there. So go to her website, sign up to her list, and check out her offerings. Donna, I'm so glad we did this. We
Me
haven't
too.
seen one another in person since the
Since
pandemic.
last year.
I know.
Yeah.
We were like meeting. You were coming for massages. We were doing things. It
Yeah.
was awesome. We definitely had like a vibe going, a flow
Yeah.
going. So
You're
I'm
so
looking.
welcome.
What you say?
No, she said, thank you so much for this conversation. I'm like, you're so welcome.
Thank you for coming, Joanna. So, hey, I'm just so happy to see you out here in the world, shining your light, offering your gifts and sharing them. I really wish you a good September healing, grief, and loss, such a apropos topic. So, everyone, thank you so much
Thanks for
for
showing up.
joining, and I'll see you next week for I think it's going to be Shayna, so Wellness Yogini. We're going to talk about Ashtanga yoga and being black and female and all the things in our lineage. Thank you, Talisa, for
Thank you,
coming.
Lisa.
All right,
Thank you for
Donna.
the heart. All
Yay,
right.
thanks
Take
for the
care.
heart. Take care. I don't want to go. I don't want to end. Okay, everyone, take care. Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye. Bye, Donna.
Bye.